It's March 15th, 2023, 11:09 a.m. My name is Kessie Ian Anderson, and welcome back to another edition of Heresiarch. So my channel is pretty much dedicated to the Noahide Laws, but they are so overreaching, overarching. The tentacles go everywhere that it can lead into basically any topic. The one that I want to discuss now is how could these Noahide laws affect us? We're in a constitutional republic. We are safe. Well, there are inroads, inlays that have already been done. There have already been events that have already paved and laid the groundwork for these to show up significantly faster than you would ever believe. Now, in legalese, in the legal world, there are things called model laws, model legislation, uniform law, model acts. These are all terms for the same thing. Model laws, model legislation, uniform law, model acts. What you have to understand is model laws trigger other laws that are hidden. Executive orders cite codes that trigger other codes. How does that work? Let's take, for example, divorce. In Utah, you cannot file divorce on grounds of adultery, which would sound strange because it's such a, in theory, Christian group. Mormons, now you can refute the Christian idea, you can get semantic or pedantic about it, or Mormons consider themselves Christian and they adhere to the Ten Commandments, but you cannot file grounds for divorce based on adultery. You can use it to pursue child support as a assist to the cause, but you can't use that as grounds because it's no fault divorce. Where did that come from? Well, that is an example of a model law. Now, your mayors, your legislators, they belong to the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, NCCUSL. There's also another one called ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council. These are all model law incubators, basically. So you have venture capitalists that have Y Combinator and stuff in Silicon Valley, and they have all these think tanks and stuff, and investors, angel investors, and look at what happened to SVB Bank. But I digress on that. I'm just using it as an example. These ALEC, American Legislative Exchange Council, and the NCCUSL, these are unions that your mayor and your state legislators, so NCCUSL and ALEC, they belong to these. They are unions. They are paid for by your tax dollars. And these groups are where these model laws come from. Okay, but what is a model law? Uniform Law Commission. Uniformlaws.org. What is a model act? An act is designated as a model act if uniformity may be a desirable objective, though not a principal objective, and the act may promote uniformity and minimize diversity even though a significant number of jurisdictions may not adopt the act in its entirety, or the purpose of the act can be substantially achieved, even though it is not adopted in its entirety by every state. The Uniform Commercial Code is an example of a model law. The Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, is a comprehensive set of laws governing all commercial transactions in the United States. It is not a federal law, but a uniformly adopted state law. Uniformity of law is essential in this area for the interstate transaction of business. Now, I will argue, even though in my quest for individuality, that it does make sense in some areas to have uniformity. So, for example, if we had 50 states and we all built highways a certain way and never connected them, it doesn't come across as a very efficient way of doing commerce or travel or anything that assists in the ease of a society. So you don't want Idaho building a road somewhere and then stop at the Utah border and just hope that Utah chooses to build a road to connect it. That's kind of where I'm going with that. However, these ideas are setting precedent to our legislators to be, number one, lazy, and number two, not understand the threat that we're under. Take building codes, for example. Let's say you're going to build a house and you just want to build a house. You have a design, you've seen it, you have an architect, they know what they're doing, or you come up with something yourself, use common sense to make it stable, a structure, you have the foundation correct. There are certain things that you will want to do to make sure it's normal and safe. But outside of that, you have your own design. You want to be zany or funky or just make it to your taste. Well, you can't do that. There are building codes. And these building codes, where do they come from? This is an example of model law. So I looked up Idaho building codes. up.codes/codes Idaho. The building codes of Idaho adopt the International Building Code 2018, International Residential Code 2018, International Existing Building Code 2018, International Fire Code, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Energy Conservation Code, Accessible and Usable Buildings and Facilities 2009, etc. Okay, is an Idaho city built like London? Is a Utah city built like Paris? Is a Florida city built like an Idaho city? This quest for uniformity, okay, it does make sense in terms of some efficiency, but what I am saying here, I'm not going to say that these are necessarily nefarious. However, this paves the groundwork to infiltrate us. This international reliance, this international just, oh, it's on the books, there, we're just going to adopt it here. One of those was the COVID response. I'm going to argue that the COVID response was the battering ram to make sure that all of the international laws were in place. For example, there's a gentleman I listened to, his name was Morgan Philpott. He is a very Mormon commenter on YouTube. His lens is the Mormon lens and it's perfect, etc. He kind of strays a little bit, which is interesting, but then he goes back on the plantation. He's a major apologist. He's figured out in his mind how to make the excuses for the religion. But he brings up some very, very, very valid points. And one of the things that he did is he researched Utah's response to COVID. And he found out that, and he is an attorney, he's a lawyer. I don't know if he's an attorney, but I know he's a lawyer, or maybe he is an attorney. But he said that laws for Idaho, Utah, and Arizona, they were passed 30 years ago that allowed the COVID-19 response. He says 20 to 30 years ago. And he says that Idaho, Utah, and Arizona brought outside CDC intelligence officers into the state and put them in charge of the COVID response. And that overrode all standing emergency protocols that these states had in place. Why? He even goes on to say that Arizona, the person in charge, they quit in protest. Now, you can go to ALEC Exposed and you can see the American Legislative Exchange Council and see who is a part of that in your state. Idaho has a whole bunch of politicians. Representative Vito Barbary, Republican. This is the State House of Representatives. Representative Brent Crane, Representative Sage Dixon, Representative James Holtzclaw, Mike Kingsley, State Senate, Senator Tammy Nichols, Senator Chuck Winder, and then you can see a huge list of past former senators and U.S. representatives that all belong to this ALEC. Now, ALEC is where these corporations go to pass their corporate legislation, and that's basically where the blackmail and they buy off these politicians. So let's go back to the building code. Let's say you want to build your house and you don't build it correctly to code. They come up to you and they can say, well, because you are outside of our legalities, you are either going to get fined, get a misdemeanor, or you cannot build. Or if you do happen to build and we just overlook it and choose to not enforce the law, we are not authorized to send you a fire truck or medical ambulance assistance if anything happens to you. So basically, that is a physical way of kicking you out. Whereas we're getting more things in place to cut us off from commerce in general if you do not comply. That's where CBDC is going to come in. So these model laws are the basis for our being overcome and superseding the Constitution to us. So model laws or acts come from organizations outside of your state. So building code, the planning and zoning gets their building code from state legislature, but the state legislatures, they do not pass their own laws. They generally reference and use a set of international codes that they adopt and use and force your city to use, an international building code. Like I just read, the Idaho building codes, they get them all from international places. And then model laws trigger other laws that are hidden. Executive orders cite codes that trigger other codes. Now, with the COVID response, California and Florida took $22 and $47 billion in COVID relief money. Utah took $105 billion. Now, $5 billion was recorded on the books. $100 billion was laundered through an industrial Utah bank in the name of a health savings account. And in October 2021, the money disappeared and cannot be traced. It's not claimed. So poof, somebody just got $100,000. And how did they do it? I guarantee it's through one of these model laws. Now, there's no accountability or transparency. Now, you have martial law. And that's what we did. Trump put us all under martial law with his executive order, and then when he declared the COVID emergency. So Utah went into a contract made with the Rockefeller Foundation and bought 500,000 rapid antigen tests under a model law agreement. Now, the Rockefeller Foundation writes these model laws. And the Rockefeller Foundation is literally the cabal, a tentacle of the cabal. Rockefellers, Rothschilds, they're all on the same team. They run the money, follow the money. But these model laws are in place, and that is how they are going to spring the Noahide Laws on us when the pendulum swings back to the right. And it will happen faster than you will imagine, because all they have to do is control these people, all of our legislators that are bought off, and they're lazy. Everybody who runs for Congress or a political thing, they just virtue signal education. Oh, I want to give more money to the schools. Schools are the last thing that needs more money. They need to restructure the curriculum. I mean, society itself needs to have a restructuring to a degree. But MK Ultra programming via everything. So yeah, I don't see us winning this. I don't know how we're going to get through this. As the banks collapse, they're going to bring in the CBDC, and that's when it is most dire. So unless you can be 100% independent and grow your own food, exist on your own, have your own network of people. There's a gentleman named Scott McKay. They call him the Patriot Street Fighter. He has this thing where he calls Patriot Underground, I believe, or some sort of thing. Well, that's based out of Idaho Falls. He goes through a company called Melaleuca. And Vandersloot, that guy is a cabal player. So his whole system is nonsense. He thinks it's doing some good thing. The guy plays ball. He donates to Monsanto, Simplot, all this. No. So we need to have an actual, some form of organic trade system, some sort of white market, if you want to call it that. Don't call it the black market, because we should do it just out in the open. But better minds than me would have to definitely spearhead stuff like that. Everybody needs to go John Galt and form their own Galt's Gulch and just start doing what they have to do. But Catherine Austin Fitts, if you know who that is, I highly recommend listening to her stuff. She was the inside of the cabal when it came to money during 9/11. And she and some friends looked and followed the money and figured out that there was 40 plus trillion that went missing around September 10th when Donald Rumsfeld gave his speech, not the 2.3 trillion he mentioned on September 10th. They traced the money. It was trillions more that went missing. And Catherine Austin Fitts talks about fiat currency and how, why does the world accept it? Why would the world accept this form of exchange when anybody can technically make their own form of exchange? Enter the military. It is through might makes right. If you do not play cabal ball, we have a military and a government that will wipe out Nord Stream 2. In order to force you to play on our team. And that's what's coming. Noahide Laws with a combination of China and Russia. And that's what's being set the stage. Congress just voted 419-0 to declassify the origins of COVID. They know where it's from, but they are going to spin it to get us in a war with China. And China, I'm going to argue, is actually innocent because all the documents that have come out have proven where this gain of function research was done. Like one of the biolabs. There's over 200 plus biolabs in the States. Level 3, there's like 11, or level 4, whatever the levels are. But the big, serious, crazy contagions that are sitting around there, that's us, that we make. And then we outsourced it after it was created to Wuhan for the narrative. So, and it was all DOD, it was all Pentagon, it was all DARPA, it was all a government creation. But it is going to set the stage for these model laws. So the COVID-19 response, that set the groundwork to enact these model laws, smooth them out, see how fine-tuned this system worked. And now when the next one hits, and it doesn't have to be medical, it can be anything they want it to be, whatever false flag they come up with. And they are going to be able to cram whatever they have planned down our throats. So the pendulum is shifted to the left. The Hegelian dialectic has been shifted to the left. They are going to swing it so far to the right, and Christians think it's going to land in their camp. And there's going to be a bit of that. There's going to be a bit of Trojan horsery where Christians are going to say, finally, we can be Christians out in the open. We can be Jesus lovers. We can be this, that, and the other. But it's not going there is what I'm saying. It's going to be a Trojan horse into the Noahide laws. And then you're going to have pastors. You're going to have them shill for Israel. You're going to have them shill for these laws. Oh, well, they're just like the 10 Commandments. No, they are not. Noahide laws are nothing like the 10 Commandments. Only the way they've worded them. The foundation is absolutely 100% different. So go watch some of my other videos to get that foundation. Until next time.